please to respect one another's views and opinions. It's really important that we all feel understood in this space, and we want everyone to feel safe. We are recording parts of this morning's session. We've had quite a few carers who sadly weren't able to attend today, but still really wanted to be able to see what was going on. So if you don't want to be seen, you're welcome to turn your camera off. And you can, if you don't want to speak as well, you can then use the chat box that I'll be checking periodically. Now, do we have any first-time Zoomers? I'm realising that I can't see.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
I've only ever used it once for a child's party, so yeah.
Oh, okay.
And to be honest, I didn't really use it. I just set it up and let the kids deal with it.
If you have any questions, please feel free to make those heard along the way. It should be pretty straightforward. If you want to use the chat box, it should come up at the bottom of your screen. And then to mute yourself and to turn your camera off, they're on the left-hand bottom of the screen. If you want to exit, you can press the leave button, which is in the bottom right. I think that's about it. As I said, if you haven't had a chance to give us your questions already, if you could use this time to put your question in the chat box, and then we'll save that for 1 o'clock. Obviously, as we hear the speakers, there may be other things that come to mind. So again, use the chat box there. And then we'll ask your questions at the relevant time. And just like Emma made the point there, sometimes our background noise can be quite loud. So if that happens, we might mute the people who aren't speaking. Please be kind and aware as we go through our session today. We understand that there might be facts shared that cause an emotional response in you. And we might feel a bit fired up, but what we're doing this afternoon is writing a letter to our MP. So that is really the space for those strong feelings to be heard, so we can collect those responses later at 3 o'clock. This morning we have got people who have given up their time for us, and we really want them to feel welcome. But I'm not asking you to ignore your feelings, but just note them and come back to them at 3 o'clock. And lastly, has anyone else got anything they want to add to our kind of ground rules there? Not hearing anything. Okay. Just realised that I'm, 5 minutes before time. I'm not going to pass over to Laura just yet. I'm going to, however, exit my screen so I can see your beautiful faces again. There we go. I'm so pleased that we've got so many of you this morning. It's really exciting. Let me just check the chat box to see what we've got. Okay, so again, if you have had any questions come to mind, please put them in the chat box. just to give you an idea, actually, we've got questions like how many carers assessments should you have, how to go about getting an advocate, and kind of thinking about what support you can get from the various speakers that have been joining us today, for instance, Carers Trust. Carers Rights Day is something that has been happening for a long time now. Carers UK are sort of the main people behind it. If any of you have done a really interesting survey this year, and if any of you are interested, go and check their website. They've got a whole host of useful information. Also, as does Carers Trust. Okay, so we've got 3 minutes now until Laura is going to join us. Oh, I know what I didn't do. Just to give you the where's my, there we go. Oh, there we go. So just to give you an overview of today, in a few moments we'll be joined at 12 o'clock by Laura from Carers Trust, and then we have got representatives from Bromley Social Services and
hang on, sorry.
hello.
Sorry.
We've got representatives from Bromley Social Services and Oxleas to explain how the process works for carers assessments. And at 12:30, I'm going to share the ways in which Bromley Well can support you. And then we're going to have Emma and Nicola from the Advocacy people at 12:45, and then we're going to ask our questions at 1 o'clock. I do have an end time there of 1:45, but it might not take that long, so we're not going to elongate the process for no reason. We will end when we've run out of questions. And I'm going to stop my share. There we go. Welcome, Laura. Thank you very much for joining us.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, and I'm going to pass over to you now. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks, Helen. Let me just share my presentation. Can you see that? And is it on the first slide?
Yeah.
It is. Oh, brilliant. And can everyone hear me okay? Excellent. Well, my name's Laura Bennett, and I work for Carers Trust. I'm our head of policy and external affairs, and I'm also a carer myself, and the person I care for has mental health problems. And so whilst we all have individual things that we care for people for, I guess there's a bit of perhaps some common experiences there, I suppose, is what I'm trying to say. And they've certainly had some blips this year with coronavirus and lockdown and everything. So if you don't know who Carers Trust are, we're a national charity that supports unpaid carers, and we work to improve things like support and services and recognition for anyone who's an unpaid carer. And Bromley Well is one of our what we call network partner members, so local carer services. And last year, through organisations like Bromley Well, Carers Trust and our local services supported over 438,000 unpaid carers, which is amazing, but also we'd love to be supporting more as well. So we recognise that that's not enough, and that there's still more work to be doing. And in my team, the policy team, we influence national stakeholders. That could be people like the government, or it could be NHS, to make sure that what carers tell us they need and what local services tell us they need is what those national services reflect, and obviously with greater degrees of success in some areas. Yeah, so I'll go on to talk about carers' rights and what those mean. So in terms of carers' rights, there are two pieces of legislation. There's something called the Care Act and something called the Children and Families Act, and we've had those pieces of legislation since 2015. They're good pieces of legislation. They put carers on an equal footing with the person they care for. What's not been so good about them, but what we haven't had is the funding to implement those rights. And so that's a real something that we keep talking to the government about, is you've got to give the funding to implement these rights. And I'm aware that with mental health issues, that might mean that some of you have been carers for a long time. So if you were familiar with the old definition of caring, which said that you had to provide regular or substantial amounts of caring, that isn't the case anymore. So all that you have to show is that, oh sorry, I've just realised you might be seeing all of the slides. I'm just going to start from the slide view. Is that better? Can people see a bit better now? Sorry about that. Can't get the staff. So what was I saying? I was talking about funding, la la la. Oh, I can't remember. I've lost my thread now with that. What was I just saying? Somebody?
The Children and Families Act and carers not having to provide.
Yes, that's, thank you. So if you have been a carer for a long time and you were familiar with having to show that you provide regular or substantial amounts of care, that isn't the case anymore. So it's about the impact on you as a carer. So arguably you could be providing, for example, only 1 hour of care, but if that has a significant impact on you, and obviously caring for somebody with a mental health issue where it can be quite intense and quite can be scary sometimes, intense feelings that someone's having can be hard to cope with, that could be something to think about there. And before, young carers, so children under 18, didn't have any specific rights, but they do now. So as I mentioned, the Care Act is a good piece of legislation. Fundamentally, what it gives you as unpaid carers is the right to an assessment of your needs, which should be separate from the needs of the person that you care for. So which doesn't mean that there might not be an assessment that happens for everybody in the household, and that could be a really good thing, so looking at everybody's needs together. But it does mean that it could be good practice, for example, just to have a little bit of time with you just on your own, because it can be, as you'll know, it can be hard to say in front of the person I care for, actually it's really difficult for me when you're hearing voices, actually it's really difficult for me when you're very down, for example. So to talk about those things in front of the person can be quite difficult. So ideally you'd have some time for yourself away from that process as well. And what the Care Act does is it tells local councils what they've got to do. So this is about your local authority. So that your local authorities, it's if you pay council tax, it's who you pay council tax to, and if you get council tax benefit or housing benefit, it's who you get that from. So in your case, probably the London Borough of Bromley, but obviously I'm aware that borders might work differently. So there might be another London Borough or another bit of the southeast that you might get that from. So as I said, fundamentally carers have got a right to an assessment, and that's about their need. Local authorities have also got to look at what would stop things getting worse as well. So rather than waiting for it to get to crisis point and then looking at what you need, what do you need now that would make things better? They've got to provide information, they've got to provide advice, and they've got to provide advocacy as well. And that's not just for the person who might have care and support needs, it's for you as carers as well. So if you're finding that you're not getting listened to, advocacy doesn't necessarily mean that someone's going to take over. It could just be that someone will help you say what you want to say. The local authorities also got to make sure that there's enough services that are there for everybody in the area, so what they need. So for carers of people with mental health issues, for example, that could include commissioning Bromley Well to make sure that there's a support group for carers of people with mental health issues, or that there's a crisis line that carers can call out of hours in the evenings at weekends or something like that. Once you've had an assessment, if the assessment shows that you've got needs that the council should meet, you should then get a plan that's about that. It should be a written plan, and you should be consulted on that as well. So it shouldn't be something that's given to you and let's go, ta-da, there's your plan. It should be something that you're consulted in. And if you're a young carer and you're coming into adulthood, so if you're 16, 17, you should have what's called transition support as well. So that means that you did get support from children's services, but you're now going to be getting support from adult services. So what can kind of help that be quite seamless and bridge that gap? So if, I don't know if any of you are also have a young carer in your family, so who also might be involved in the care of the person with mental health issues. But if during an assessment there's found to be a child present, then that should look into what more support can be got for the family. And the two pieces of legislation that I mentioned, they work together. This also affects you if you care for your child who has a mental health problem, whatever age they are. So if they're coming into adulthood, for example, that transition assessment that goes from childhood to adulthood, if you're a parent carer, it should look at what do we need as a family when my child was under 18, and what will we need when they become 18 and over. As I mentioned, these rights are good because they help, they do take things for carers forward, and they put carers and the person we care for on an equal footing, which is a good thing. And well-being and prevention are really at the heart of that, so that's a really good thing for carers. Thinking about the assessment, so this is something that any carer can request. It can be done, as I mentioned, it can be done jointly with the person you care for or on your own, but you might want to think about having some time together and some time apart. It's absolutely not about how good you are as a carer, so it's not about assessing how good you are, it's about assessing what you need, if you see the difference. So assessment can make us think, oh crumbs, am I going to be found that I'm not good enough? It's not about that, it's about what you need. And the council, and if the assessment shows you've got needs that the council must meet, then the council have got to make sure that you get that support. It's not just enough to say, okay, here's a list of things you could try, buy, sort of thing. I mentioned that prevention's really important, so thinking about how can we prevent carers from needing support. So that could be giving more support to the person who has care needs, for example, or it could be making sure you get a regular break, for example. So how can we stop those crises from developing? Something that's really important is thinking about carers' well-being, and well-being is really broad. So it could be our physical health, it could be our own mental and emotional health. How much control do we feel that we've got in our lives? So can we participate in the work or the education or the training or the volunteering that we'd like to? If we have religious beliefs, can we get to the faith services that we want to, or does caring stop us getting to those? And then there's a shift from not just services, but meeting needs. So what are your needs and how can those be met? If you're able to do paid work, you have a right to ask your employer for flexible working. And you also have a right to ask to say that you'll need some reasonable time off for dependents. That's particularly important for carers of people with mental health issues, because obviously sometimes crises can happen and you can't necessarily predict when the person will need your support. So for some people that might be more easy to predict, but for some carers of some mental health conditions that won't be easy to predict. You also have a right to claim things like state benefits. That could be carers allowance, for example, and carers credits. Benefits entitlement is complex, so it's good to get some advice about that. And sometimes you can be an unpaid carer but not be entitled to carers allowance, which can feel really difficult. It's worth noting that one of the things the government did introduce during the coronavirus crisis was, in order to claim carers allowance, you have to be providing 35 hours a week of support or more. And they changed that during the coronavirus crisis specifically to include emotional and mental health support. So 35 hours of providing emotional and mental health support would definitely count. So it's worthwhile thinking, if you've been turned down in the past, you might now be eligible, so that's something to look into. And what should also happen if you get carers allowance is that you'll get something called carers credit as well, which tops up your national insurance contributions, and that can help you later on with things like pensions and that kind of thing. And it might also mean that you'd also be entitled to those kind of other free things like free prescriptions, free dental checks, free eye tests, etc., that kind of thing. So it's worthwhile looking into those kinds of things. Now, what we more commonly hear from carers is that their rights aren't being met. So if you think that that has happened, and you can appeal to the councils, the first thing or to the benefits agency, you can ask them to look at that again. You can make a formal complaint if you weren't happy with that. Once you've made a formal complaint, you can contact something called the local government ombudsman. You could contact your local councillor or your local MP, and there'll be other ways to kind of look at how you can get involved. So, for example, I'm sure Bromley will be able to tell you how you can get involved with things like carers forums, for example. Local Health Watch might be somewhere that you might want to get involved with as well. And you can also campaign. So if that's something that's of interest to you, please do get in touch with us, the policy teams. That's policy@carers.org. That was a bit of a whistle-stop tour. I think we've got questions later on the panel, but I have come in like 3 minutes short, so maybe Helen might let me have like 1 or 2 questions now, so we've got time. I don't know. So do I need to stop sharing so you can go back to your... Shall I stop sharing, Helen? Would that be the thing to do? Yeah.
Thank you so much, Laura. It was really informative. I think we'll use those 3 minutes and ask you one of the questions that I have, which was, what other support can Carers Trust offer carers? This is adult carers as well as mental health carers.
Muted myself, classic 2020, bingo. Let me just come off mute. So one of the things that we provide to all of our network partner members is we provide grants, for example. So Bromley Well can apply with you for a small grant, and there are different funds that we have available. So some carers have used grants to get themselves things like a laptop, for example, because that would mean that you could keep in touch with family and friends. Obviously, at the moment, it would mean you could do things like online shopping a bit more easily as well. Sometimes some carers have used it for things like buying a new bed so they get a decent night's sleep. Could be getting a decent chair so that you can sit up and do things like read or craft activities or something like that. So anything that would help you feel good or have a break. And we ask that carers apply through a local partner. So in this case, it would be Bromley Well. So you don't apply directly to us for those. Yeah. But there are other grants and things that you could apply for as well if you're not eligible for a Carers Trust grant. We also have other kind of programs that we run nationally. So for example, working for carers, you could, if you're interested in getting back into work, that's something that we run, and you can get bespoke support to help you work out how you can get back to work from the Working for Carers project. So all of our London network partners are part of Working for Carers. Yeah, and you'll get things like support, ways to kind of, it might be support with the CV, or it might be interview prep, or whatever it is that you need. And so there are some small grants that are available through that as well. So I know that carers have used it for various kind of like amazing and creative things. So I know one carer wanted to set them, well, obviously this is pre-corona, but you know, if you go to a pub or a club, you see people who are like the registered door people. So they set themselves up, you have to get a license to be one of those people, and so they retrained to do that because that meant they could be flexible with their hours, so that worked around their caring situation, so they could be a door person evenings and weekends, and that worked for them and the rest of their family around caring for the person. Yeah, so it could be, so that's one example, but other people have gone on courses. or have bought themselves some computer software. So it's, you know, there are all sorts of creative and kind of flexible things that carers have been able to do with that. Trying to think what else we have nationally for kind of adult carers as well. And as I said, there are kind of opportunities as well to kind of, if you'd like to share your story with the media, that's something that we can look into doing as well. Or if you'd like to kind of campaign with us, come and talk to politicians, that kind of thing. Obviously, at the moment, this is all being done digitally. So we're not, all Carers Trust staff are currently working from home, and that would obviously be COVID safe. So you wouldn't need to worry about yourself or the person you care for. So we're not asking anybody to go gadding about into London at the moment, central London.
Thank you so much, Laura. That was
Okay.
really
We've got a minute over now.
So now we're going to hear from a representative from Oxleas and Bromley Social Services, and they're going to be talking a little bit more in depth about how Bromley really works through the process of carers assessment. So welcome, Tim. Tim's going to start for us, and then we're going to pass over to Sarah and Errol. Thanks, Tim.
Thanks, Helen. Good afternoon. So hello, yeah, my name is Tim Souter. I'm the locality manager for the Bromley East adult mental health team based at Carlton Parade. I'm sort of working from home today, as you can see. I'm keen on cycling. Anyway, what I want to really talk about is really, for us, it's about how we involve carers. Now, one of the really important things is listening to carers. It's something we don't do enough of. So if you are a carer and the person you care for is under mental health services, the first thing really to do would be to talk to either to the care coordinator, or if you're not under CPA, they're not under CPA, maybe just seeing a doctor or a psychologist, whoever it is, you could speak to that person in the team and request a carer's assessment. If you don't know who to contact, if you're not sure who the person is under, you contact myself, just ask for me. I'll be happy to point you in the right direction. So yeah, the process of the carer's assessment, you would request it through that member of the team, and then either it might be actually the care coordinator who is supporting the person you care for, who would actually do that carer's assessment, or it might be someone else in the team that might do it. So for example, if they're just seeing a doctor, that doctor probably wouldn't do the carer's assessment, so it might be someone else, a nurse or a social worker or an OT or OT assistant who might do that carer's assessment. But if, and there might be circumstances, say for example, if the person you care for, sometimes they don't want the carer involved in their care. But even in those situations, the carer is still entitled to a carer's assessment. So it might actually be a different person in the team that will carry it out, just so they can be a little bit objective, a bit distant, and give you the opportunity to give the whole story. As I said at the start, it's very much about listening to carers and involving carers. And I said before, it's something that I'm being picked up through audits, reviews, that we need to be better at listening to carers, understanding the difficulties that carers are experiencing, maybe any barriers they're having to accessing care, if they're concerned that the person they care for isn't getting the support they need. So we need to be listening to carers, which is why we would welcome you requesting a carer's assessment. In terms of kind of concrete outcomes, sometimes there won't be a very specific concrete outcome, but you know, it's about, it may be linking you in with other support, some of the other support services you'll be hearing about today, or it might be looking at alternative ways in which we need to be supporting the person that you care for. But it really is about involving you as a vital person in the care of that person, and about understanding and recognising your needs as a carer. that's probably all I want to say for now. I'm sure there'll be questions. I think we hand you over to colleagues in social services to say something about the slightly more formal structures there, and then hopefully they'll be available for questions afterwards. So back to you, Helen.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Tim. Who's Sarah? Thank you, Sarah. I'll pass over to you. Not hearing you at the moment, Sarah.
Can you hear me?
Hello, Errol. Yes, we can hear you.
Hello, yes. Yeah, probably just some technical difficulty, but that's fine. I will you know, do my bits anyway. So really, between Sarah and I, we wanted to approach you just to advise about you know, carers' rights to you know, an assessment. A lot of what we've covered, a lot of what we've you know, we've prepared has kind of been covered by Laura and Tim before us, but we will go over it anyway and add our bits as well. Okay, so as has been rightfully mentioned, the rights to a carer's assessment, you know, follows the implementation of the Care Act 2014 under Section 10. Now, you know, I suppose the protocol in determining whether, you know, someone an assessment is needed is where it appears to a local authority that a carer may have needs for support, whether currently or in the future, then the authority must assess. Yeah? Now, under this, there's you know, there are conditions beneath this. Now, A is whether the carer does have needs for support or is likely to do so in the future, and B, if the carer does have needs for support, what are those needs, or what are they likely to be in the future? So in this way, it's kind of, you know, particularly that clause about the future, it's an assessment that is preemptive as well, and, you know, tries to reach people, you know, at the very least before, you know, they go into crisis or there's risk of carer breakdown. You know, we aim to anticipate some of these needs if it's not categorically clear, you know, what the you know, specific or visible needs are. Yeah, and obviously that involves conversation with the carer, you know, even conversation with the cared for person, perhaps, just to get that information, you know, to scaffold that assessment. Okay. So how to start the process? Essentially, if one contacts the Adult Early Intervention Service and asks for a carer's assessment or a review of the support plan. Now, this may be pertaining actually to the cared for person, but obviously, likewise, it could also pertain to the carer if the carer is known to us and has previously been assessed. Then yes, of course, a review of the support plan, you know, is embedded in that. One can ask for an assessment before taking up a caring role. So if someone in the community is discerning whether, to, for example, give up maybe their full-time employment or part-time employment or voluntary role, all in an effort to, bravely or courageously provide care, they can seek an assessment beforehand to find out, also to find out, I guess, what the implications of that are, the challenges that is inherent in a carer's role, and also just to, to seek the options, to seek what benefits they may be, entitled to via a carer's assessment, or signposting. Yeah? So yes, they can take up an assessment prior to actually, setting off as an actual carer. So we have, information on this on the London Borough of Bromley website. If anyone has access, is internet capable, or computer literate, and can access the website, then I would urge you to look for additional information, just by typing carers assessment into the search bar in the London Borough of Bromley website, where there is a link as well to complete the carer's information form. So he would take some preliminary information, i.e. what the relationship is, the details of the cared for, and I guess the intent of the potential carer as to what they're looking to do. And or alternatively, one can call our adult early intervention number, that is 0208 461 7777. That's 0208 461 7777. You would get through to our essentially you would get through to our initial response team, where an initial contact worker can take those details to begin with, and then distribute or cascade as necessary. Okay. So what happens when the assessment is completed? Can be a telephone or face-to-face assessment. The form can be sent to complete and returned, and then the worker can go through the responses with the person. Before the assessment, however, I would urge that you give yourself time to think about the role, how caring affects you, and any help that may make a difference to you as a carer. Areas covered, involves the support you provide to the cared for person, what support you receive, what is important to you, what works well in your role, what you find difficult, and what support could help. And there are domains, outcomes within a carer's assessment, considering, for example, a caring role for a child, maintaining their own physical or mental health, maintaining personal relationships, engaging in work or training and recreational activities, making use of community facilities, engaging in cultural, social, spiritual, and leisure activities, maintaining a habitable home, and managing your nutrition. Now, the outcomes, a support plan will be completed with the carer, which details how their eligible needs will be met. It may be agreed that the best way to support a person as a carer is to provide services directly to them, or provide services to the person they care for, or it could be a combination of both. And it will be person-centered, of course, to their needs. So, for example, considering if there's technology that can help, assistive aids, to help with tasks that they are unable to complete during their caring role, help to relieve stress or to maintain their physical and mental well-being, mindfulness, yoga, swimming, gym attendance, hobbies, that kind of thing. And then the time frame for from a referral to the outcomes, The telephone carers assessment is usually completed by the care manager assistant or the initial contact worker in the initial response team. Yeah, the timescale is dependent on waiting list. Currently, at the moment, it's being turned around in about a week or so, give or take. Now, if a face-to-face assessment is required, this is transferred to the duty team and will take a bit longer, just due to the need for allocation, availability, etc. So this would likely be about 6 weeks, depending on circumstances and urgency. Any questions with regards to this? Again, I would direct you to the Bromley website. Please do contact us as well by email or by phone if you would like more information. That's me done. Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much, Errol.
Thank you.
And thank you for giving Sarah's viewpoint there too. I am now going to share my screen again and talk a little bit more about Bromley Well. Hopefully, we've gone back to the beginning. Don't want to do that, do we? Okay. Bromley Well, I want to talk a little bit about what we can do to help. So there are 2 teams in Bromley Well that support carers, and that is the adult carers team and the mental health carers team. We work together and kind of strive to do the best for all carers. So this can happen in various different ways. We offer lots of free training and workshops. Obviously, up to March this year, they were happening face-to-face. And this year, Carers Week back in June, Jenny from the Carers Service did a wonderful lot online to support carers. Obviously now, today, Carers Rights Day, we are again working online. Hopefully, we will go back to face-to-face generally next year, but I'm very excited to learn today that the adult carers team are going to do some face-to-face support groups in December, so that's something to look out for. We also have the Bromley Well Facebook support page. So that's the adult carers and the mental health carers. And throughout lockdown, the adult carers team have been producing e-bulletins. So they've been dropped right into your email box, and we are working towards a newsletter, which will be hopefully, if you can receive that by post, that'll be dropping into your letterbox soon. This time last year, I think it was, that we did a carers forum, and we'll be looking to do more of those next year. The carers forum generally happens 4 times a year, and that's a wonderful experience and opportunity for you to have your views and opinions as carers heard, and for us to respond to those as a team at Bromley Well, and make sure that we are meeting your needs as a carer. We've also got the WhatsApp group, which many of you will be part of, as a wonderful way of staying in touch and kind of getting the latest information from the teams. And the majority of our work is kind of the emotional and practical support, and obviously this year has mostly happened on the telephone or through Zoom. For the mental health carers, I've been operating a virtual drop-in group, and the adult carers have been operating a Zoom support group. If you want to find out more information about that, you can email us at carers@bromleywell.org.uk. And we are always here to remind you about your flu jab, which you're entitled to every winter if you're a carer, and also remind you to register with your doctor that you are a carer, so that they can take that into consideration. So that's just a little bit about the adult mental health carers services. I'm now going to touch on Bromley Well as a larger sort of support system. So we're just one part of Bromley Well. As you can see in the picture on the right there, Bromley Well is made up of lots of different pathways. So just to have a look at those, we've got the autism and learning difficulties. We've got thinking about long-term health conditions. Of course, we have young carers, which Laura talked about earlier. We've got physical disabilities, we've got an advice service, services for older people, and then services that concentrate on your mental health and well-being. And the reason why I want to point this out is because caring involves a huge range, huge levels of responsibility. And all of these different things can be affected. You might be a carer caring for someone with physical health needs, but you yourself also have long-term health needs. So where can you go for support? Long-term health conditions would be one of those pathways. Obviously, when you're a carer, you've got to think about perhaps some benefits forms, or thinking about council tax and things like that. And that's where our advice service comes to the fore. We're thinking about benefits and form filling. And then if you find that on top of a caring role that you are struggling with your mental well-being, we can put you in touch with the mental health and well-being service. Help with any pre-existing long-term health conditions. Long-term health conditions are a great team. They've got lots of online support at the moment, in particular things like fibromyalgia and thinking about diabetes, and really things to help you think about your health and well-being. And of course, access to help and support for older people. Now, all of these services, they come from 5 charities that have got together to really support the Bromley residents. These are MenCap, Age UK, Mind, Bromley Lutheran Greenwich Mind, Community Links, and Citizens Advice. So they're the 5 charities that get together to make up Bromley Well. So if you find yourself thinking within your caring role that there are a lot of other things that you need to address, as well as the kind of emotional impact on yourself, then please don't forget that there are these other services here to support you. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now and come back to you all. Yes, Mary, I can pass over to you to speak a little bit about the forum. Mary, are you there?
I'm here, sorry.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Firstly, thank you to Helen and Jenny for organising today. It's a very important day for our carers, and it's good to always get a reminder. I'd like to thank the speakers as well, and in particular Errol, because I know it's his first time in doing something like this. So well done, Errol. But basically, our forum, during lockdown, we haven't had a forum. So we're one down, but we will be having one on the 16th of December, and it will be virtual. It will be via Zoom, And I would encourage as many people as possible to attend, because it's really important that we represent the views of our carers. It's not solidified yet, but we do hope to have some councillors and other representatives from statutory agencies attending to talk about the impact of the closure of some of the day centres that have happened during lockdown. Now, I know from personal experience with my carers, as I'm sure everyone else does, the impact that has had on a lot of you. And I'd really encourage some participation on the 16th. You will be able to get details on the Bromley Well website. Our e-bulletin, thank you Jenny, has gone out this morning. Our newsletter, paper version, will go out on Tuesday. All the details will be in there. So I really encourage as much participation as possible, because like Helen was saying about this afternoon, we in Bromley Well, we do try where possible to reflect the needs of our carers back through to the statutory agencies that make the laws. And agencies such as ours is the opportunity for carers to actually be heard. So I just wanted the opportunity, thanks Helen, to butt into your meeting and encourage as many people as possible to attend the Carers Forum on the 16th of December. We also welcome non-carers, because it's always very useful to have representatives from other service providers present at the forum, because that gives you the opportunity to see the dynamic and the disparate spread of our carers and their needs, and also gives you the opportunity as professionals to reach out and network to carers, to engage carers in your service. So I'm going to stop hogging your time now, Helen. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you very much. Exciting news. So 16th of December, one for the diary. And just following on from what we want to explain what we are doing at 3 o'clock today. So it's another Zoom session. If you haven't already booked your place, you can, emailing carers@bromleywell.org.uk. So what we're doing this afternoon at 3 o'clock is collectively writing a letter to the MPs in the borough of Bromley. And that is where we can really think together about what are the main issues and concerns that really affect you, and how and where there might be needs of yours that aren't being met. So that is our soapbox that we're going to be standing on and shouting very loudly, getting in touch with the councillors for Bromley and making sure that your voices are heard. Hopefully, by next week we'll have the letter together, and we'll be able to share it with you. We want as many signatures on that letter as possible, and together I think we can make a really strong point for the carers that we support. We know that there are so many challenges, especially this year. I think the lockdowns and the tier system that we've been through this year have put on an extraordinary amount of strain on carers, and especially when services have gone online and they're not as available. They might have staffing difficulties and things like that, which trickles down to carers. So we need to make our MPs aware of those challenges that you've faced. If you'd like to join us and you haven't yet signed up for the 3 o'clock session this afternoon, email carers@bromleywell.org.uk and you will get the Zoom link for our 3 o'clock meeting. And I'm now going to pass over to Emma and Nicola, and they are from the Advocacy people.
Hello there, we're from the Advocacy people, and in Bromley we deliver independent mental health advocacy, we deliver community mental health advocacy and health complaints advocacy. I'm going to pass you over to Emma first to talk about carers' rights under the Care Act in terms of their rights to advocacy, and then I'll be speaking a bit about carers' rights under the Mental Health Act and carers' rights in the health complaints process. So I'll pass you over to Emma.
Hi everyone, I'm Emma. I'm not putting my camera on because I'm not a big fan of showing my face anyway. But yes, I just wanted to touch a little bit on the Care Act and carers' rights under that. It probably will reiterate a lot of what Laura said earlier on today. So the Care Act 2014 gave the local authority the duty to consider instructing an ICA, which is an independent Care Act advocate, when there are a certain number of things that they need to be doing under the assessment and review. So it's an adult needs assessment, a carers assessment, a preparation of care and support plan, a review of preparation and support plan, and a review of the carers support plan, and then also a child's needs assessment, transition, and a child's carers assessment under transition, and a young carers assessment, as well as safeguarding and safeguarding adults reviews. Under the Care Act, a Care Act advocate must be instructed if there are certain criteria met. So it's not a they can if they want to. It is a must. They must instruct an advocate to work with the person. And that is if the person has substantial difficulty in understanding information, retaining, weighing it up, or communicating wishes, views and feelings. And that can be very, very wide. So even though as carers you might be involved in this process for the people you care for, there are still sometimes some difficulties in understanding what you're actually entitled to, and that's where an advocate would be able to work alongside you to making sure that you get your wishes and feelings over to the local authority. An independent care advocate supports a person to understand what's being asked by the local authority and be fully involved in that process of assessment. So as a carer, to make sure you're fully involved in the process of your assessment of your needs for you. And also can communicate that person's wishes, views and feelings, or support you to communicate those and reiterate those to the local authority. Support the carer to take decisions and challenge those made by the local authorities. If you're not happy about something, we can support the carer in order to raise that with the local authority, and that forms part of understanding your rights. And if appropriate, look at health and social care records as well, and talk to those that can help with permission from the carer if you needed to have other people's involvement within that, and also to support and represent people within the safeguarding process as well. We have as an organisation a fact sheet which I'm happy to share if you would like to distribute those around. I'll pop it in the chat bit, and if you have any questions regarding advocacy and Care Act, please do get in touch with myself or Nicola or the Advocacy people as an organisation. More than happy to signpost and talk you through things. I'll pass you over to Nicola. My bit was quite short.
Hi there. So next I'll talk about carers' rights in the NHS health complaints process. So you can make a complaint in a representative capacity about any treatment, decisions or services which are for the person you are looking after. If either they agree that you can make a complaint on their behalf, or if they lack mental capacity to make a complaint on their own behalf, or if they do not wish to complain but the complaint raises serious issues of such importance that it should be investigated anyway. And you have a right to, as a carer, to an independent health complaints advocate. Complaints normally should normally be made within 12 months of the date of the event that you're complaining about, or when you or 12 months of the date you find out there's a problem. And we would support carers to compile letters, put them in concise, put it in a concise manner, to be clear about what outcomes they want to achieve, and then we would support people in the local resolution meetings, and the aim would be to resolve things in the local resolution meeting so it doesn't escalate, but if it needed to, then we could support people going to the Ombudsman. So now I'll talk a little bit about the mental health. So going back to what Emma was saying, a partner or family member, if a partner or family member has a mental health problem, so if you look after someone with a mental health problem, you might be unsure whether what you do counts as caring, or whether it's just part of day-to-day life. And a lot of people associate caring with physical tasks, but giving emotional support can also be a big part of caring. So if you are supporting somebody with mental health issues, then you have rights, as Emma was saying, under the Care Act. So now I'll talk a little bit about the nearest relative under the Mental Health Act. So the nearest relative is a term used in the Mental Health Act, and it tells you who your nearest relative should be. And their job is to look out for the client and make sure their wishes and choices are heard and understood. So if the person you care for is under Section 2, 3 or 4 of the Mental Health Act, under a CTO or guardianship, then they have certain rights, and it's not the same as a next of kin. So the rights that a nearest relative would have would be right to information. They'd have the right to ask to get an assessment because they're worried about the relative's mental health. They have the right to ask for the relative to be detained. They have the right to ask for discharge of their relative under the Mental Health Act, and if the responsible clinician prevents this, then the nearest relative can ask for a tribunal. And they've also got the right to ask for an independent mental health advocate. So the nearest relative would firstly be a spouse or civil partner, then it would be the oldest son or daughter. If you haven't got those, then it would be your oldest parent. Then it would go to siblings, grandparents, grandchildren, aunt and uncle, and niece or nephew. And sometimes it's difficult to know the right questions to ask when a relative's detained. So some questions that might be useful to ask the mental health team is, for example, why is my relative in hospital? What care and treatment is my relative getting? How do I visit and stay in touch? Are there any restrictions placed on visits? And can I take my client out? My relative out? What support will they get when they leave hospital? How will I be involved in decisions? And have they been referred to an independent mental health advocate? And that concludes our brief talk. I hope it's been helpful and not too jargony.
Thank you so much, Nicola. I think for anyone who wants to have a bit more thinking time on that, then do use the website that Emma's shown and shared with everyone. I really hope